another print disability that makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org. And your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service now presents a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News for Monday, July 13th. Your readers today are
Ted Pajacki.
And I'm Ed Howard, and we're going to start with the weather, and in a word, it is hot. Partly sunny and very warm today with a high of 87. Mainly clear tonight with a low of 71. Partly sunny, windy, and very warm tomorrow, again with a high of 87. Wednesday, it'll be partly sunny, remaining very warm but less humid. The high will still be 87. And on Thursday, increasing cloudiness with a high of 84 degrees. Our normal high and low temperatures for this date are 80 and 63. The record high was 96 degrees set back in 1936, and the record low was 48 degrees set back in 1898. And last year on this date, the high temperature was 92 degrees. Ooh. As far as precipitation goes, it's been dry so far this month. We've only had 0.07 of an inch of rain. Normally we have almost 1.2 inches. However, because we had a rainy spring, we're still well ahead on precipitation year to date. We're about 6 1/3 inches above normal. And today's air quality index is going to be moderate.
As we turn to the front page, Graham's unexpected death shakes up the Senate and the midterms. The sudden death of influential Republican Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina will have implications for legislative business in the Senate, where the GOP's slim margin is already under stress with the absence of Kentucky Senator Mitch McConnell and the midterms coming up in November. Graham died following an aortic tear, according to a preliminary finding Sunday from the Washington, D.C. Medical Examiner. Here's what we know about what comes next. How will Graham's seat get filled? Under South Carolina law, Governor Henry McMaster can appoint a temporary replacement to fill Graham's now vacant seat. But because Graham was up for re-election this year, his death will kick off a sprint primary election to replace him on the November ballot. Officials have yet to announce how Graham will be replaced, but state law appears to call for a special primary election on August 11th, with a possible runoff on August 25th to choose a new nominee. Under that timeline, candidate filing would run from July 21st to the 28th. However, that schedule could come into conflict with federal law, which typically requires 45 days of absentee voting for Americans in the military or overseas. The winner of the primary could face the Democratic nominee, pediatrician Annie Andrews, in November. In a statement on Sunday, Andrews called Graham a man of great faith who proudly served our nation as a JAG officer and Air Force colonel. I hope that South Carolinas will join me in setting partisanship aside and offering gratitude to Senator Lindsey Graham for his service to the great state of South Carolina. Who might replace Graham? It's too early to say with any precision who might replace Graham, but some early names emerged on Sunday. Representative Nancy Mace, who finished in 5th place in the recent South Carolina gubernatorial primary, told CNN she was strongly considering a bid for the seat. A source familiar with the matter also told CNN that Pamela Yvette, the lieutenant governor, was fielding calls about getting into the race. Yvette ran for governor this year and had Donald Trump's endorsement, but she lost in a runoff after the president also endorsed her opponent. Trump said on Sunday that he had someone in mind for who he'd like to see serve out Graham's term. I have somebody that I think would be great, but I don't want to say it now because it's too soon with Lindsey, Trump said yesterday on NBC's Meet the Press. Representative Joe Wilson posted on social media Sunday that he had spoken with the president and implied he was not interested in the interim appointment. I was grateful to speak with President Trump today, reminiscing about our mutual friend, Wilson said, referring to Graham. I assured him my goal is to remain in the House to keep his 2-vote majority for the American people. Representative Ralph Norman, a prominent member of the House Freedom Caucus, who at one time was widely considered to be contemplating a challenge to Graham in the GOP primary, told CNN that he has not decided whether he is interested in vying to replace him now. Asked about his interest in potentially seeking the seat, he told CNN by phone on Sunday morning, "I don't know. I'm like everyone else. I'm in shock," he said. Norman ran for governor in last month's primary, but placed third and did not advance to a runoff. While Norman is a fierce defender of Trump, his calls for fiscal restraint have sometimes put him at odds with GOP leaders and the White House. Norman said the Senate wasn't necessarily on his radar, but in the Senate, you can do a lot of good things. What about the balance of power? Graham's death should have a short-term impact on the overall balance of power in the Senate. McMaster is a Republican, so his appointment could restore the 53-47 GOP advantage in the chamber. And there will likely be pressure for McMaster to make an appointment quickly, as the Republican caucus had already been operating short one member in recent weeks due to McConnell's hospitalization.
Well, staying on the front page of today's Buffalo News, our next headline is Buffalo judge who smelled something fishy moves law enforcement mask lawsuits to Albany. It will be a federal judge in Albany, not Buffalo, who decides whether a New York state law that bars federal agents from wearing masks while interacting with the public passes constitutional muster. U.S. District Judge Lawrence Villardo on Friday transferred the Justice Department's lawsuit over the ban to the federal court system's Northern District of New York. Justice Department lawyers objected to moving the case out of Buffalo, but Villardo said he had, quote, reason to smell something fishy, unquote, with their decision to file the lawsuit in Buffalo. The Justice Department lawsuit filed last month named Michael Russo as one of the defendants in his official capacity as the Assistant State Attorney General in charge of the Buffalo Regional Office. But Russo has not held that position for more than 2 years. The judge noted that careless error, but said he dismissed Russo as a defendant because the 154-paragraph lawsuit mentioned Russo only in a single paragraph, failing to make any connection between the office that Russo once held to the harm the Justice Department says the new law poses. Once Russo and his former office are removed from the equation, there's simply no basis to keep the case here, Villardo said. On the same day the Justice Department filed its lawsuit, the state hours later filed a mirror image lawsuit in federal court in Albany seeking a declaratory judgment about whether the new laws are lawful. It doesn't make sense to have two cases pending on the same issue, does it? Villardo asked at a recent court hearing as federal and state lawyers argued over the venue choice. Lawyers for State Attorney General Letitia James, a defendant in the federal lawsuit, asked Villardo to transfer the case to Albany. They raised suspicions the Justice Department lawyers picked the Western District of New York for their Department of Justice lawsuit believing that is where they most likely would gain a favorable judgment. The choice to name Russo as a defendant without doing even the most basic due diligence to confirm that he was still in the job that he had in fact left years before is highly suspect, Villardo said. The fact that the complaint includes absolutely no facts about Russo's role in the challenged conduct heightens that suspicion. And the fact that the United States previously filed several similar lawsuits in the Northern District of New York, but chose not to return there after an unfavorable result, provides even more reason to smell something fishy, close quote. The Justice Department last month filed the federal lawsuit in Buffalo seeking to overturn what it called the, quote, blatantly unconstitutional, close quote, law. The Justice Department said the law banning law enforcement face masks that took effect June 26th cannot be applied to Immigration and Customs Enforcement, FBI, and DEA agents carrying out their federal duties because it violates the Constitution's Supremacy Clause, under which states cannot regulate federal agencies. Villardo quickly dashed any hopes Department of Justice lawyers might have had in gaining a better outcome in Buffalo than before judges in Albany, when the Justice Department sought a preliminary injunction against the law enforcement mask ban before it took effect. Villardo rejected the request for a quick hearing on the matter, allowing it to take effect. The Justice Department gained a better result in Virginia, where a federal judge temporarily blocked Virginia officials from enforcing a new ban on law enforcement officers wearing face coverings hours before it was set to take effect. In that case, U.S. District Judge Robert E. Payne on June 30th issued a preliminary injunction against the ban, ruling that the measure was an unconstitutional attempt to regulate the federal government. The injunction in Virginia will remain in place until the case is decided. New York's face mask ban covers state, local, and federal enforcement officers, but state officials clearly aimed the ban at ICE, whose agents have arrested immigrants and clashed with protesters amid one of the largest deportation efforts in U.S. history. Governor Kathy Hochul said she supported the measure as one way, quote, to hold ICE accountable, adding that New Yorkers deserve to know who is enforcing the law in their communities. Another new state law prohibits local governments and state agencies from entering into agreements with the federal government that allow for local and state law enforcement and corrections personnel and facilities to be used for civil immigration enforcement purposes. Justice Department lawyers argued that the federal government has 14 agreements with a dozen agencies in 11 counties and municipalities, including with local police and county sheriff's departments. 6 of the agreements are in western New York, and 6 others are in northern New York, with a couple of others in different parts of the state. Of the 6 agreements in the Northern District, only 1 is in the court's Albany Division. Of the 6 in western New York, 4 are in the Buffalo Division. Also, U.S. Customs and Border Protection has a regional headquarters in Buffalo, another reason the DOJ picked Buffalo as the place to file its lawsuit, said Brandon Newman, a trial attorney for the Department of Justice's Civil Division at a recent hearing. Following the state's logic, all cases about conflicts between state and federal law and policies can only be heard in the federal court located in a state capital, the Department of Justice said. But any federal court can preside over civil actions arising under constitutional complaints, Department of Justice lawyers said in a legal brief. In this case, the state's preferred judge in the Northern District is not more of an expert than this court on the law and the United States Constitution, Department of Justice lawyers said in their court filing in Buffalo. Villardo said he is sensitive to the argument that not all Supremacy Clause questions in New York have to be heard in Albany.
You are listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier radio reading service, and the time is 15 minutes after the hour. We turn now to the opinion section of the news, and we start off with the editorial by the Buffalo News staff, and the headline is Jail Tragedy. And this is about the recent death at the Erie County Holding Center that the staff says demands a thorough probe. There are too many unanswered questions following last weekend's apparent targeting and killing of Antonio Pizarro at the Erie County Holding Center, described as having been inflicted by two inmates, one of whom restrained him from fighting back, while the other one choked him. Where exactly were the jail staff? How could this happen? How does the sheriff's office prevent this from happening again? Pizarro, who was 27, was taken into custody on June 30th on a parole violation charge. His death has already renewed questions about the safety of the holding center and the sheriff's office responsibility to protect those in its custody. This is not the administration of former Sheriff Timothy B. Howard, whose tenure included numerous jail deaths resulting from overdoses, medical emergencies, or neglect. Since John Garcia became sheriff in January 2022, jailhouse deaths have not become the recurring headline they once were under his predecessor. But there have been deaths, and accountability still matters. After his death, Pizarro's mother wrote on Facebook, criticizing the legal system that, quote, chewed him up, spit him out, and killed him, end quote. She also referenced the holding center death of her niece, Rosalie. In 2014, a woman named Rosalie Yvette Mendez, who was 26, was found to have died by suicide in a county jail after being held on misdemeanor drug and weapons charges. Given the holding center's history, it is understandable that Pizarro's family views his death through that broader lens. Since Garcia's tenure, there has been much discussion about the conditions at the holding center. It has been criticized, undoubtedly fairly, as outdated, inefficient, and a safety concern for those housed there. However, as mentioned in these editorial pages a couple of years ago, deaths during his predecessor's tenure could be traced to the failure of jail policies and operation, not cracks in the brick-and-mortar facilities. One of the key questions following Pizarro's killing is whether it suggests that policy and operational improvements remain in dire need of repair. Garcia has declined comment. As the new Sandra Tan reported, the sheriff's office issued a news release last weekend saying the death is being investigated as a homicide and that potential subjects have been identified. Also not commenting is District Attorney Michael Keene, whose spokeswoman referred to the ongoing investigation. County Executive Mark Poloncarz said he believes there will be charges against the two individuals, but noted that it is up to the district attorney or the Attorney General's office to determine the level of charges. It is helpful that the Attorney General's office has begun a preliminary assessment to determine whether any holding center staff played a direct or indirect role in Pizarro's death. The State Commission of Correction also has indicated that it will investigate. No inmate has been killed since Patrick Yale, who was 49, in 2012. Yale was also jailed for a parole violation. He was severely beaten by another inmate the same day he was taken into custody. He later died in Erie County Medical Center. His assailant, who had been jailed on arson and assault charges, was charged with second-degree murder. Being jailed should be part of the judicial process, not a death sentence. Those investigating Antonio Pizarro's killing must do so transparently and in a manner that reinforces public trust.
Well, staying on the editorial page, we have the Another Voice column, and today the topic is housing, and the author is Diana Patton, who is president of the Eagle Crest Tenants Association. And the headline here is, Residents of Manufactured Housing Have Concerns. She writes, I live in a manufactured home park in the 149th Assembly District. I also help lead a tenants association. Over the past few years, I've watched my neighbors organize, not because they wanted to be political, but because they had no choice. We organized when rents kept rising without explanation. We organized when infrastructure questions went unanswered. We organized when residents who are seniors, veterans, or disabled worried they could be priced out of the homes they owned. Manufactured housing is often described as affordable housing, but the reality is more complicated. Many of us own our homes and rent the land beneath them. This means when a lot rents increase or when roads, drainage, or utilities become issues, we can't just move. Moving a manufactured home can cost more than the home itself. Our housing stability depends heavily on state policy and on whether elected officials understand how these communities actually function. That's why engagement matters. Over the past year, I've worked with neighbors through the Manufactured Housing Alliance of New York and the Eagle Crest Tenants Association to help residents learn about protections under New York's real property law and local oversight rules like Town of Hamburg Code Chapter 165. What we discovered is that many policymakers don't fully understand how limited those protections are or how quickly affordability can disappear. Adam Bojack, who won the recent 149th District primary, came. He attended meetings between tenants and park owners and toured communities. But despite repeated invitations, Frank Bolgowski has not visited manufactured home parks in the district to meet with tenant associations about the issues affecting us. This isn't about party politics. Neighbors in my community include Democrats, Republicans, and Independents. What we share is the concern on whether we will still be able to afford to stay in our homes 5 years from now. Residents here aren't asking candidates to agree with us on everything. We are asking them to show up, ask questions, and understand the realities facing thousands of people living in manufactured communities across Western New York. If someone wants to speak for a community, the first step should be visiting it.
Now we have our editorial cartoon for the day, and it comes to us from Mike Lukovich of the Creators Syndicate, and it has 2 panels. In the first panel, there is an image of President Donald Trump, and it's his head and his shoulders, and he's saying something. And the little pocket above him says, Trump is saying this: Democrats are communist, and communists are evil, despicable scum. In the next frame to the right, there's a image of a bare-breasted, without a shirt, Putin. And he's sitting on Donald Trump, who's down on all fours, and he's riding him. He's got a harness. And Donald Trump is saying, President Company excluded. So you can make your own judgments there about communists and their friendships and their evilness.
No comment.
No comment.
But we will
just read them.
We will turn the page to the political columns now, the opinion columns. And our first one comes from Lindsay Lavery, who writes for the Chicago Tribune, and the headline on her article is, Choose Senior Living Ahead of an Emergency. There is a distinct, heavy silence that accompanies a late-night phone call. For adult children of aging parents, it is the one we quietly dread. A sudden fall on the stairs, an acute medical event, or a rapid and unexpected decline in health that changes everything in the blink of an eye. In my work in senior living, I see the aftermath of these midnight calls every week. Families arrive at our community doors at Franciscan Village in Lamont, Illinois, exhausted, overwhelmed, and under immense pressure. They're caught in a compulsion mindset, a state of mind in which life's circumstances have taken the wheel, forcing a major life transition under the duress of an immediate emergency. When a senior living decision is born out of compulsion, it becomes a transactional race against time, a clinical checkbox to solve a crisis. To experience the fullness of our later chapters, we must push back against the compulsion mindset and reframe how we view the senior living timeline. When a family waits for an emergency to dictate a move, they unknowingly surrender their power of choice. In a healthcare crisis, the timeline is compressed into days, sometimes hours. Hospital discharge planners, the staff responsible for safely transitioning patients out of a hospital bed, must secure an immediate destination for rehabilitation or long-term care to free up hospital infrastructure. Under this kind of pressure, families choose what is available and immediate rather than what is optimal and fulfilling. Furthermore, making a move under the weight of an emergency shifts the focus entirely to physical care, overshadowing the emotional, social, and spiritual dimensions of wellness. The senior often feels a sense of loss and resentment because the decision felt forced by circumstance rather than chosen with dignity. But at its best, it is a lifestyle choice. Refusing to plan does not prevent a transition, it simply guarantees that it will happen under the worst possible conditions. When seniors exploit community living proactively, the entire narrative flips from a reactive retreat to an empowering step forward. Consider the profound difference when a senior moves into an independent living cottage or apartment on their own terms. They're moving because they want to spend less time managing life's mundane burdens and more time cultivating their passions in a vibrant social community. Proactive planning also allows families the time to look for a campus that aligns with their personal values. For many who come to our Franciscan Village community, that means finding a place where their faith can continue to flourish, whether that involves walking a Stations of the Cross path or attending Mass in a campus chapel. When seniors make the choice to transition early, they give an extraordinary gift to their adult children, the gift of relief. Instead of forcing children to become crisis managers, scrambling to piece a care plan together, a proactive plan allows families to remain simply families. The best time to choose a senior living community is when you can do so with a clear mind, an open heart, and the freedom to choose your future on your own terms. Don't wait for the midnight call to make the choice for you. And Ted, I'll tell you, I've been there, done that, and this lady is right.
Yes, sirree. You are listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, and the time is 28 minutes after the hour. And our next opinion piece comes to us from David Zirin of the LA Times. And its headline is, "Decades ago, Zinn spoke to this moment. We need him today." Not many historians have seen their work referenced on The Simpsons and The Sopranos. Not many historians have been condemned by name by a president on the White House lawn for the, quote, crime of researching and writing about this nation's history. And not many historians have taught countless people that this country's past looks quite different depending upon the perspective of those doing the telling. This is Howard Zinn, who shaped Americans' understanding of themselves through 7 decades of activism, and whose insights should continue to color how we understand the news of the day. Zinn is both perhaps the most banned historian in U.S. history and the author of arguably the most enduring U.S. history text, the 46-year-old and still best-selling, quote, A People's History of the United States, end quote. He had died a decade earlier when President Trump, amid the worst of the COVID-19 pandemic, held Zinn responsible for left-wing rioting and mayhem and propaganda tracts that try to make students ashamed of their own history. At the barest bones level, detractors attack Zinn for the same reason teachers, students, and readers celebrate him, because his work inspires people to think critically, fight back, and make their own history. For the authoritarian, the thought of people being inspired in such a manner is chilling. It also contradicts their politically useful belief that history only happens at the behest of, quote, great men. Those who've read Zinn, and some of the generations of historians inspired by him, recognize this to be the greatest lie of all. As he wrote, the good things that have been done, the reforms, all of that was not done by government edict. It was done by citizen movements. What really matters is what people are doing and what people are saying and what people are demanding. And yet, the last 10 years have been difficult for those influenced by Zinn. We saw mass protests across the globe in the 2010s, but some of these citizens' movements drew violent backlash. In the 2020s, we have seen Trump returning to power at home and right-wing authoritarianism on the rise internationally. This has caused people to ask me what Zinn himself would say about our current state of affairs. People wonder what this radical optimist could possibly feel positive about in these increasingly dark times. It's a dangerous game to speak for those not here to speak for themselves. But Zinn said and did enough in his life to at least provide a roadmap to what his observations could be. After all, he was an engaged activist for more than 70 years, and he left behind a trove of speeches that speak to this very predicament of whether we should lose hope when movements fail. If Zinn were here today, he would first ask questions. He'd want to know why young people could be so angry at the world, but also so despondent about whether change could happen, about whether another world is even possible. Born in 1922, he had experienced too much in his life to lack perspective in reactionary times. Zinn would be pointing to times in history that were the darkest before the dawn. Zinn once said, "An optimist isn't necessarily a blithe, slightly sappy whistler in the dark of our time. To be hopeful in bad times is not just foolishly romantic. It is based on the fact that human history is a history not only of cruelty, but also of compassion, sacrifice, courage, kindness. What we choose to emphasize in this complex history will determine our lives. If we see only the worst, it destroys our capacity to do something." I emphasize only to point out that Zinn is not saying to ignore the worst or pretend that it's not happening, just to not let despair guide our politics or our frame of mind. History proves that when there are green shoots pushing out of the concrete, then those of us who want change need to tend to them, not ignore or even stop these little glints of hope because they aren't yet what we want them to be. We need hope and truth tellers more than ever because this country at 250 is suffocating under an avalanche of disinformation and, quote, alternative facts, end quote. Fighting for the truth means telling the stories of the deliberately unheard. That was the life's work of Howard Zinn, and we need it more than ever.
Well, turning back to the front page of today's Buffalo News, our headline is Tripathi has guided UB to a much better place, and as he prepares to step down, the president reflects on growth and change. Satish Tripathi oversaw tremendous change at the University of Buffalo during his 15 years as president. Enrollment boomed, rising to about 30,000 students. UB added new academic departments, fostered startup growth, moved its medical school downtown, and built or renovated an array of buildings. The state designated UB as the hub for its Empire AI initiative, enhancing its status as a flagship of the SUNY system. UB's reputation as a research institute has grown, and the university's Boldly Buffalo fundraising campaign raised about $1.1 billion. Ask Tripathi about all of those results, and he deflects the credit. It's hard for me to define my own accomplishments, he said. Attracting the best students here, the faculty that we bring in here, the infrastructure that we've created, the rankings that have gone up, the impact we have in Western New York region, all of those are really institutional impact, and I've contributed to all of those for 22 years. Tripathi, a native of India, served as UB's provost for 7 years before he was named president in 2011. He is handing the reins to Caroline Itaro-Jenko, a Buffalo native, and she officially starts on August 10th. But Tripathi isn't retiring. He'll return to his faculty role in the School of Engineering and Applied Sciences, spending the next year focusing on research. When Tripathi took over, enrollment at the school was about 28,000 students. We decided not to grow for a while, and then we said 30,000 would be a good number, and we are right there. During his presidency, the percentage of incoming first-year students reporting a grade point of 3.75 or higher has tripled. UB is a destination for international students, but that number is down by about 800 last year in light of federal policies. There are issues with respect to how much time it takes to get a visa and how they perceive the country and the job market. All of that is going to play a role, and it's hard to predict because things change continuously. But if you go outside and look at the countries, the U.S. education still is the best education they want to have. So it's not that they feel differently about education, but it's really all the other things in between.
Also on today's front page, Trump's snub of housing bill blunts Republican midterm messaging. A sweeping housing bill became law on Saturday without Donald Trump's signature or any White House fanfare, after the president soured on a package of dozens of affordability provisions that he derided as a, quote, yawn, end quote. Trump's scuttled support and dead-of-night enactment are setbacks for his allies on Capitol Hill, who'd been looking to cast the law as a major bipartisan win on an issue voters are prioritizing heading into the midterm elections. The president's turnabout also serves as a reminder of how quickly he can swerve on policy matters, even on a law that features provisions he and his own advisors negotiated. As recently as June, Trump hailed the package as, quote, the most comprehensive and consequential housing legislation in the history of our country, end quote. The 21st Century Road to Housing Act will curb large institutional investors' ownership of single-family homes, streamline rules around factory-built housing, and encourage localities to remove barriers to construction in an attempt to bring more supply to the market. Lawmakers had planned a splashy, camera-friendly signing in the Capitol for Trump in June of a package they'd spent months jockeying over. Trump then scrapped the ceremony at the last minute, saying the housing package, quote, pales in comparison, end quote, to a voter ID law he has championed. Trump on Friday again linked the bills. Quote, I will not sign the housing bill, which has been fully approved by Congress and sent to the White House in protest over the fact that the United States Senate is not capable of passing the Save America Act, end quote, which is what he wrote on social media hours before the bill was set to become law. Trump's withdrawal from the planned June signing set the stage for an unusual waiting game in Washington. The president has 10 days, excluding Sundays, to sign or veto legislation once it's been sent to their desk. If no action is taken, the bill becomes law at the end of that time. The 10-day period expired Saturday, leaving the most consequential housing legislation in decades to become law in a very uncommon way.
Well, next we have a column focused on analysis, and the headline is Originalists Split with History, Trump on Birthright Citizenship. The Supreme Court's conservative justices say they decide based on the words and original history of the Constitution. Following the lead set by the late Justice Antonin Scalia, they see history and originalism as a guiding principle to prevent judges from changing the Constitution to adjust to new and changing times. This approach is said to contrast with an evolving or living Constitution favored by progressives and liberal activists. But this year saw a flip of sorts on birthright citizenship. The foremost conservatives agreed with President Trump that the surge of illegal immigration called for reconsidering the promise of birthright citizenship as set out in the 14th Amendment of 1868. The number of illegal immigrants in the country exploded in recent years, Justice Samuel Alito wrote in dissent. The rule of citizenship at birth provides, quote, a powerful incentive to enter or remain in this country illegally, close quote. The Constitution is an enduring document, wrote Justice Brett Kavanaugh, but its rules and meaning must adjust to, quote, modern situations that were unknown or unanticipated by the Constitution's framers. In a concurring opinion, he said that, quote, significant illegal immigration into the United States is a new occurrence that was largely unknown in 1868. There were no federal immigration laws in the mid-19th century, but it was an era when a surge of Irish immigrants had settled on the East Coast and large numbers of Chinese immigrants came to California. Under the law, their children were deemed to be citizens at birth. Among the conservative originalists, only Justice Amy Coney Barrett signed with the majority opinion that was written by Chief Justice John Roberts and joined by the three liberals. In an executive order, Trump proposed to end birthright citizenship for newborns whose parents were in the country illegally or temporarily. Writing for the court, the Chief Justice said in the words of the 14th Amendment were clear and clearly understood at the time. He dismissed what he called the dramatically revisionist view that has been cited recently. Kavanaugh voted with the majority to block Trump's order from taking effect because Congress had adopted birthright citizenship in a 1952 law. Justices Clarence Thomas and Alito wrote long dissents arguing that the framers of the 14th Amendment did not or would not have favored birthright citizenship. They pointed to recent scholarship by law professors that raised questions about the accepted understanding of the 14th Amendment and the citizenship rule. Thomas said citizenship of the child should turn on whether the parents were domiciled in this country. Black people who were enslaved were undoubtedly domiciled here, but the same is not true of temporary visitors. Many court commentators were surprised by the close 5-4 divide on the constitutional issue. Given how clear the language was, I expected it to be 7-2, said Melissa Murray, a New York University law professor. I really gasped when I saw that it was 5-4, and this is not settled. Sarah Isgur, a podcaster and SCOTUS blog analyst, said that, quote, originalism is getting more and more muddied. Either history matters or it doesn't.
Our next article has this headline: Low U.S. birth rate risks creating a glut of housing. For the past decade, scarcity was the U.S. housing industry's most powerful marketing tool. The less there was to buy, the greater the urgency to keep bidding, even as prices hit record highs. Demand was supercharged by record low pandemic-era mortgage rates that sparked bidding wars and sent prices soaring, crushing affordability. Recent estimates of the national housing shortage have ranged from 1.5 million to 7.3 million units. But a new era may be dawning in which a shortage of buyers, not homes, is the defining figure. According to a new white paper from the Mortgage Bankers Association, starting in 2030, deaths in the U.S. are projected to outnumber births, meaning that without immigration, which is now being throttled by the Trump administration's crackdown, the population would begin to shrink, according to the Congressional Budget Office. The next decade is likely to be quite different, said Mike Frantantoni, the MBA's chief economist and co-author of the paper. We're moving from a time of rapid household formation to one where there's a slowdown. That outlook is far from certain given all the variables, such as a future administration that could decide to expand immigration and a stronger labor market that could boost household incomes. For now, affordability remains. For the past decade, scarcity was the U.S. housing industry's most powerful marketing tool. The less there was to buy, the greater the urgency to keep bidding, even as prices hit record highs. Demand was supercharged by record low pandemic mortgage rates and sparked bidding wars and sent prices soaring, crushing affordability. But a new era is dawning. The next decade is likely to be quite different. The outlook is far from certain given all the variables such as a future administration. National housing prices are starting to adjust. After rising 55% from 2020 to 2025, a shrinking pool of potential buyers has the MBA projecting a growth of only 1% in 2026 and flat home prices over the next 2 years. Even if it's not a recipe for a broad market crash, continued construction could cause values to drop in some places. For the mortgage industry, oversupply and falling prices could mean fewer loans for new purchases and less demand for refinancing. Other analysts are seeing similar evidence of changing demand for housing. An assessment released last month by Harvard University's Joint Center for Housing Studies found that household growth fell to 1.1 million in 2025 from 2 million in 2021, the third straight year of decline, as young people double up with roommates or live with family rather than go out on their own. The demand slowdown is coming, said Alexander Herman. That's a real thing.
Well, normally at this time, as part of our newspaper reading, we present the day's death listings and offer, you could call us at 716-821-5555 if you have any further questions. Today's only death listing in the paper is Senator Lindsey Graham. And Ted, I'm not sure that we really have anything more to add, seeing as how Senator Graham's death has been in the news for a while here. And normally we say if you need further information about any of these names to call us. However, today I would say if you need further information, perhaps you could turn on CNN.
Okay. We turn now to the horoscopes. And if today's your birthday, July 13th, you are kind-hearted, innovative, and intuitive. You recognize opportunities and know how to seize the moment. This is a fantastic year to socialize and enjoy life. Nurture the happiness and beauty that you have within. Let your guard down and loosen up a bit. Old friends might reappear to rekindle relationships. So as we go to the individual horoscopes, the star shows the kind of day you'll have. 5 dynamic, 4 positive, 3 average, 2 so-so, and 1 difficult. And as a little prep, they're all 2s and 3s today. Might be a good day to stay inside with the air conditioning.
Yes, it will.
We'll start with Aries, 2 stars. This might be a challenging day dealing with issues related to home and family, including parents. Obstacles might arise in addition to some confusion. Tonight, relax at home. Taurus, 2 stars. Don't get your belly in a rash. Things look worse than they really are today. Many will fall prey to negative thinking or believing something that isn't true. Tonight, seek out conversations. Gemini, 3 stars. Be careful about financial transactions today, including shopping, because an element of confusion is present. Tonight, take care of your possessions. Cancer, 2 stars. Today the moon is in your sign, challenged by other planets, which might make you feel gloomy, depressed, or cut off from others. This is only temporary. Tonight, you're strong. Leo, 3 stars. Some days the glass is half full, and other days the glass is half empty. This is a half-empty day. Ignore the paralysis of the negative. Tonight, enjoy privacy or privacy. Virgo, 3 stars. Today's a mixed bag. A friend or a member of a group might disappoint you or be on your case for some reason. Nobody likes this. Tonight, be friendly. Libra, 2 stars. This is a poor day to ask authority figures like bosses, parents, teachers, and the police for permission or approval. You might say the stars are not aligned for you today. The truth. Sorry. Tonight, you're noticed. Scorpio, 3 stars. A friend or member of a group might do something unexpected that pleases you today. Hopefully, this is true. Tonight, explore and learn. Sagittarius, 3 stars. Although you might have disputes with someone about shared property that are disappointing, something pleasant will give you a boost. Tonight, check your finances. Capricorn, 2 stars. Don't push your luck talking to partners, spouses, or close friends today, because issues are tricky, confusing, and disappointing. Tonight, cooperate. Aquarius, 3 stars. Work might be tedious, boring, disappointing, or mildly scary today, especially if someone has the evil eye on you. Tonight, get organized. And finally, Pisces, 3 stars. A pleasant exchange with a partner, spouse, or close friend might give you a lift to your day. You might ask yourself if your expectations are realistic. Tonight, socialize.
Well, now it's time to take a trip in our time machine to the distant past and look at this day in history. And in 1787, Congress passed the Northwest Ordinance, which created a governing framework for the Northwest Territory. an area northwest of the Ohio River, also known as the Old Northwest. In 1930, the first World Cup soccer matches were played, with France defeating Mexico 4-1 and the United States beating Belgium, we got them that time, 3-0 in Montevideo, Uruguay. In 1956, a Dartmouth workshop on artificial intelligence began in what's widely seen as the founding of artificial intelligence as a research field. In 1960, Senator John F. Kennedy from Massachusetts was nominated as the Democratic Party's presidential candidate, defeating Senator Lyndon Johnson of Texas. Johnson was then nominated for vice president. In 1985, Live Aid played simultaneously at Wembley Stadium in London and John F. Kennedy Stadium in Philadelphia. The star-studded concert raised hundreds of millions of dollars for famine relief in Africa. And in 2024, 20-year-old Thomas Crooks attempted to assassinate Donald Trump at a campaign rally in Butler, Pennsylvania, while the then former president was working on his successful re-election bid. Trump escaped with a wound to the right ear, but an audience member, Corey Comparator, was killed and several others injured before the Secret Service fatally shot the gunman.
We have some news briefs here. The president slashes wildlife protections. The Trump administration finalized a rollback on the Endangered Species Act on Friday, paving the way for drilling, mining, and other human development across protected wildlife habitats. The move redefines the word harm under the Endangered Species Act, the landmark conservation law that protects threatened animals and endangered plants and animals. For years, harm meant actions that injure or kill wildlife, as well as actions that destroy protected habitats. Under the new rule, destroying those habitats is no longer illegal. The environmental groups have called this decision a disaster, saying it puts protected species on a path to extinction.
Well, you're listening to a reading of articles from the Buffalo News from Monday, July 13th on your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. We'll return for more readings after this short break. Your readers today are
Ted Pajacki.
And I'm Ed Howard.
Hello, listeners. Give 716 is happening now. It's an online fundraiser sponsored by the Buffalo Bills and Buffalo Sabres Foundations, with dozens of prizes and matching grants available to make your donation to Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service go farther. You'll find a complete list on our Facebook page, but here's what I suggest. Mark your calendar for Thursday, July 16th from 8 p.m. to 11:59 p.m. If you make any size donation to radio reading on Thursday, July 16th from 8 p.m. to 11:59 p.m., we'll automatically enter you in a drawing for a pair of Buffalo Bison's tickets, redeemable for a Tuesday through Thursday home game before August 31st. If you donate $50 or more, you'll also receive your choice of a Buffalo Bills, Sabres, or Bandits pendant and a chance to win an even grander golden ticket one-of-a-kind experience from the Bills and Sabres, like tickets, private tours, and autographed team merchandise. You can go to give716.org anytime before July 17th to make a donation to Radio Reading. Make a donation on Thursday, July 16th from 8 p.m. to 11:59 p.m. to win the extra prizes. That's give716.org. Search for your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service and make a very important donation supporting our future.
We'll continue now with our reading of articles from today's Buffalo News. And your readers are
Ed Howard.
and Ted Pajacki. And we start off now with some city and regional news. And wow, we didn't have any death listings, but this is a death listing. Robert C. Noonan, the oldest man in New York, dies at 108. When you've lived long enough to become New York's oldest man, your life can be measured in eras. World wars, the Great Depression, the rise of television, the turn of a millennium, and more than a century of Western New York winters. Robert C. Noonan's family, though, remembered him in a more personal term, as a man of deep faith, humor, and unusual generosity, who opened his Cheektowaga home to visitors from around the world. Noonan, who's a World War II veteran, a longtime accountant, and a father of Buffalo-born singer-songwriter Willie Nile, died July 2nd at his home. He was 108 years old, 231 days old, and had been the 16th oldest man in the United States. Born in Buffalo on November 14, 1917, Noonan retained a sense of humor that his son Thomas said could be traced to his childhood exposure to vaudeville. Noonan's father led orchestras that performed during vaudeville shows, and his son grew up watching the acts. One of Noonan's favorite sayings was, "I'm humble and proud of it." Even after he began using a rollator walker, he joked that it was his girlfriend. He had a great sense of humor like no other, Thomas Noonan said. Noonan served in the U.S. Army near the end of World War II and attended Officer Candidate School. He returned home to his family on Christmas Eve, 1945, his son said. He later became a certified public accountant and operated his own firm until retirement. He also spent time working in the beer business during the 1960s. Noonan and his wife Josephine built a family centered on their Catholic faith, travel, and service to others, loved ones said. He was a parishioner at St. Aloysius Gonzaga Parish in Cheektowaga from 1953 until his death. For many years, he attended Mass and received communion nearly every day. He probably received more communions in that church than any other person, his son said. Robert and Josephine Noonan also assisted with a Catholic ministry devoted to the enthronement of the Sacred Heart of Jesus, a ceremony in which families dedicate their homes to Christ. The couple helped priests conduct the ceremony in more than 150 homes, according to their son. Their hospitality extended well beyond Western New York. Through a program called Buffalo World Hospitality, the Noonans welcomed international visitors into their home during their stays in Buffalo. They also helped establish a student exchange program connecting Buffalo with Quito, Ecuador, and Bogota, Colombia. Over the years, the couple hosted students from several countries and maintained many of those relationships long afterward. Two former exchange students from France returned to the United States to celebrate Noonan's 100th birthday. Growing up around those visitors gave the Noonan children a lasting interest in other countries and cultures, Thomas Noonan said. It formed a real interest and respect for those of other countries, and the fact that we don't have all the answers here, and that people from other countries have just the same kind of problems that we do, he said. Noonan frequently praised Josephine and credited her for much of the charitable work that they undertook together. The couple also created a home in which their children felt accepted regardless of the paths their lives took, their son said. He would never make us feel like we weren't loved, and my mom was the same way, Thomas Noonan said. We were all 8 kids. We're all going to be different, you know? One of those children, Robert Anthony Noonan, became better known as a musician by his stage name, Willie Nile. The critically acclaimed singer-songwriter has performed or recorded with artists including Bruce Springsteen, The Who, and Ringo Starr. The youngest of Noonan's children, John Noonan, died in 2007 at the age of 50. Away from his professional and volunteer work, Noonan enjoyed crossword puzzles, history, sports, golf, and card games. The family summered in the Hampton Beach, New Hampshire. Noonan treated his remarkable age with characteristic modesty. When asked about death, he would say, "I'll go when the king wants me." His son said the response reflected the faith that guided Noonan throughout his life. His attitude was, "It's God's plan," Thomas Noonan said. Through his life, he always was close to Jesus and had him in his heart, and it kind of directed what he would do. Noonan is survived by his children, Richard Noonan, Thomas Noonan, Nancy Litvak, Robert Noonan, Teresa Noonan Gerber, Joseph Noonan, and Francis Noonan, plus 21 grandchildren, 58 great-grandchildren, and numerous great-great-grandchildren. What a life.
What a life indeed. Well, our next story in the city and regional section is headlined "After a Violent Holiday Weekend, Rift Between Buffalo Police Union and City on Full Display." A percolating City Hall fight came bubbling to the surface amid the controversy and violence of the 4th of July holiday weekend. In the weeks leading up to the holiday, the city's police union consistently posted on its social media accounts the number of days it has been since the city's contract with the union expired. On July 1st, that mark hit 1 year. Buffalo Police Benevolent Association President John Davidson has repeatedly pointed to the lack of a contract as a major obstacle to recruitment, an issue he has said is a significant threat to the department's ability to function. As Mayor Sean Ryan was dealing with fallout from a controversy surrounding the raising and theft of the Somali flag in Niagara Square, and one of the most violent stretches the city has seen in recent years, Davidson and the PBA took aim at the city administration on political stances, the lack of a contract, and the many shootings that took place. Davidson asked that questions for this article be submitted by email, but then did not respond. But in a text message distributed July 3rd by an account used to disseminate information to police union members, the union warned of counter-protesters who may have shown up to a rally on July 4th as having, quote, TDS, or Trump derangement syndrome, a derisive term used by supporters of President Trump to describe people who criticize him. This current city administration values the libtard ways more than celebrating this country's great 250th anniversary, the message read in part. Ryan, in an interview last week, said he represented many people with developmental disabilities in his time as an attorney and found the use of the term libtard and the partisan tone of the message particularly alarming, given that it was distributed by an organization whose members are charged with protecting all people in the city, regardless of political affiliation, disability, race, or religion. It doesn't reflect the values of the people of the city of Buffalo or the values we're trying to instill in the Buffalo Police Department, Ryan said. Davidson went on media blitz in the wake of the weekend violence when 11 people were shot in Buffalo, all survived, in an area around a street takeover, an outdoor party organized through social media channels on East Delavan Avenue. In a KBW interview, Davidson described the violent weekend as a disaster and a sign of a trend in the city that he has linked to staffing and recruitment issues. It's becoming a crisis point, Davidson said in the interview. We're not staffing the police department. But in public statements and comments to the Buffalo News, Ryan and city officials have disputed many of the union's claims. Deputy Police Commissioner Craig Macy told the News in an interview earlier this year that recruiting is a priority and the department plans to hold another recruiting exam this year, a claim reiterated by Deputy Mayor Maria White during a news conference. White said the city is continuing to work on getting the exam scheduled. We intend to fill those positions, she said. A Facebook post to the PVA's official account said there is no opportunity to join an exam past the upcoming July 27 session. Unless there is a secret class that they're hiding from the public, Buffalo will have 0 recruits in that class, the post reads.
West Seneca's newest town board member resigns after just 31 days. Mark Priori's tenure as a member of the West Seneca Town Board ended after 31 days. Priori resigned on Friday morning, just over a month after he was appointed to fill a seat left vacant following another departure from the board. It marks the second time in 3 months that a West Seneca Town Board member has resigned. Priori said in an interview that he stepped down because he didn't realize how much time he would have to devote to the office on top of his responsibility to his job, his union, and his family. There's just no way I could have upheld my oath of office to perform my duties as a councilman for the residents of West Seneca, who deserve nothing but everyone's best effort to the best of my abilities, Priori told the Buffalo News on Friday. There's just not enough hours in the day, so essentially, something had to give. West Seneca Democrats pounced on the news, wondering whether Priori resigned under pressure from town Republicans after Democrats publicized financial issues that dimmed his re-election chances. They also said the resignations of Priori, former town board member Jeffrey Pekarik, and former town prosecutor Chelsea McDonald highlight Republicans' flawed leadership in the town. West Seneca residents deserve transparency from Town Hall, and time again, this Republican town board has shown they are fundamentally incapable of delivering on that, Democratic Chair Amy Kobler said in a statement on Friday. Priori, who's a Republican like every other town board member, said his decision to resign was his alone. West Seneca Supervisor Gary Dixon said Priori's Friday morning announcement was unexpected. He said the board will leave Priori's seat vacant instead of making another appointment until a previously scheduled special election is held in November. Dixon added that the Democrats' criticism is misguided, and West Seneca voters have demonstrated what they think of them by handing the GOP total control of the town board in recent elections. It's a bunch of sour grapes, he said in an interview. They've lost practically everything, and they're bitter about it, and it certainly shows in practically everything they put out. Priori was appointed to the town board to fill the vacancy created by Pekarik's resignation on April 7th. Pekarik has been elected to the board and was elected in 2019 and then re-elected in 2023. In a resignation note that focused on his accomplishments in office, Pekarik said he was leaving his board seat to be able to dedicate more of my time to other professional and volunteer endeavors. However, Dixon said Pekarik's resignation followed the disclosure of text messages Pekarik shared with a West Seneca resident that appeared to reveal confidential information the town board had discussed in executive session. Leaking the content of such discussions can damage the town's interest and cause embarrassment or hurt the reputation of innocent parties, the town supervisor said in a statement then. Once trust is gone, it cannot be recovered. Mr. Pekarik had made the right decision to resign and give the town board an opportunity to appoint a replacement.
You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, and the time is 15 minutes past the hour, and it's time for sports.
Yay.
And today, baseball leads the stories with the baseball draft and Portville's Max Yale and Cheektowaga's Dalton Harper being selected in the Major League Baseball draft. Portville's Max Yale, who became one of the best pitchers in the country at West Virginia this spring, was selected in the Major League Baseball draft by the Kansas City Royals on Saturday. And another Western New Yorker was picked Sunday when Dalton Harper, a Cheektowaga native who completed his sophomore season catching at Niagara County Community College, was selected by the Atlanta Braves in the 16th round as the 472nd overall pick. Yale, a 6'6" left-handed pitcher, was drafted with the 91st overall pick in the third round on Saturday at the draft held at Pennsylvania Convention Center in Philadelphia. Yale generated a decorated redshirt junior season that ended in the NCAA Division I Men's College World Series. He overcame Tommy John surgery that sidelined him for the 2025 season to become the Big 12 Pitcher of the Year, a National Pitcher of the Year finalist, and a unanimous All-American in 2026. Entering the draft, Yale was ranked by ESPN as the 161st best prospect. He began working out for professional teams following West Virginia University's long postseason run in June. Yale graduated from Portville in 2022, where he helped win a Section 6 championship and led the program to the state Final Four. Former Portville coach Mike Matz, who stepped down in 2024, was overjoyed to see Portville, New York on an ESPN graphic while Yale was pitching in the College World Series. He told me a long time ago that he wanted to put Portville on the map. Yale managed career bests across the board this spring after Tommy John surgery forced him to redshirt in 2025. As a starting pitcher for the first time in his college career, Yale recorded a .213 ERA while going 9-3 in 18 starts, which included the program's first College World Series run. It was a blessing in disguise, Yale said during a press conference in March. To be able to take a step back and watch the game from a fan or coach perspective, I feel like it really slowed the game down for me when I was able to get back on the bump. As a freshman in 2023, Yale went 1-0 in 17 appearances with a .354 ERA. In 2024, he appeared in 24 games and finished with a 2-0 record, 2 saves, and a .399 ERA. He earned the attention of Major League Baseball scouts with his performance in the Cape Cod Baseball League that year. Harper, a 5'9" Maryville High School graduate, was committed to Penn State, but said he'll begin his pro career after being drafted by Atlanta. The 11th Niagara Community College player drafted since 1967, Harper was home in Cheektowaga playing his MLB The Show video game to pass the time this weekend. He was surrounded by his mother and father in the living room when the Braves called him on Sunday. It was a very surreal moment, Harper said. I've had all of Western New York helping me. It takes a village to become who you are, and I appreciate all the coaches and families that have helped me along the way. So seeing all the hard work and everybody helping me pay off, it was truly amazing and feels amazing, and I'm really excited to get started. And I know this is only beginning because the end goal is to get to the big leagues. But I'm extremely excited, I'm extremely blessed, and I'm super excited. I couldn't do any of this without the man upstairs. A lot of faith, a lot of ups and downs, but I knew he'd make it happen at the right time. Harper was also named the Junior College Athletic Association Division III Player of the Year after guiding N-Trip to the program's first national championship in May. He had a .556 batting average this spring and holds numerous records, including N-Trip's modern-era career home run record with 20.
Well, as the World Cup winds down this week to its final championship game, this next article is about the final games coming up now. It's entitled Extra, Extra Effort. Argentina and England have met 5 times previously on the World Cup, matches that have provided some iconic moments. But they've never met as deep as the competition as they will on Wednesday when they'll spar in a semifinal matchup in Atlanta. Both teams advanced with extra time victories on Saturday. Argentina defeated the 10-man Switzerland 3-1 in Kansas City, Missouri, after England dispatched Belgium 2-1 earlier in the day in Miami Gardens, Florida. After his side's victory to book a clash against their longtime rivals, Argentina coach Lionel Scaloni said their showdown should be viewed as nothing more than a game. It's a soccer match, period. There's nothing more to it, he told reporters after Argentina kept alive their bid to win back-to-back titles. Let's not look for anything else, Scaloni said. It's a soccer match. We're going to play a soccer match against a great national team that has a great coach, whom I appreciate and admire a lot. Julian Alvarez scored the tiebreaker in the 112th minute, and Lautaro Martinez added an insurance goal in stoppage time as defending champion Argentina prevailed. Alexis McAllister also tallied in the 10th minute off an assist from Lionel Messi, whose streak of goals in 9 straight World Cup matches came to an end, but still managed to get his record 10th career assist in the competition. I'm very happy, said Alvarez, whose curling right-footed strike from just outside the top of the penalty area on the left side found the upper far corner of the net, just eluding the reach of Swiss goalkeeper Gregor Kobel. We tried until the end. Things got difficult, even though we had a man extra for the whole of extra time, Alvarez continued. But we knew if we kept going together, the goal would eventually come. Dan Ndoye scored for Switzerland, which played short-handed from the 72nd minute onwards after Briel Embolo received a second yellow card and was ejected. The latter was for simulation of a video review by referee João Pedro Silva Pinheiro. Kobel and Argentina goalkeeper Emiliano Martinez each made 4 saves. Switzerland got the tying goal in the 67th minute following a sustained push. Ndoye played a give-and-go with Ricardo Rodriguez near the top left corner in the penalty area. Ndoye got the ball back and dribbled to the edge of the 6-yard box before putting a low shot between Martinez's legs as the goalie started to go down. The truth is, we suffered today. We knew they were a very physical team. I think they put us in a lot of difficulties, Scaloni said. We weren't able to get out of certain situations. The truth is that luck was on our side today because they had a player sent off, and from there, our team went on the attack.
Well, next we have a few notes from hockey, and the first is the executive who helped get the Canes their new home dies. Stephen Stroud, a prominent real estate executive in the Triangle who was integral in building the Lenovo Center and bringing the Carolina Hurricanes to Raleigh, North Carolina, died on Saturday. Stroud, 83, attended NC State and was a longtime supporter of Wolfpack Athletics, serving as president of the Wolfpack Club. He was also president of the Centennial Authority, appointed a body that oversaw the building of the Lenovo Center, first known as the Raleigh Sports and Entertainment Arena, that opened in 1999 and continues to serve as the arena's landlord. As authority chairman, Stroud worked with Peter Karmanos to bring his NHL team to Raleigh and give the area its first Major League franchise. Karmanos relocated the Hartford Whalers from Connecticut in 1997, rebranded the team the Carolina Hurricanes, and helped to fund the cost of building the arena. Stroud, who began his real estate career in 1965, was the founder of Carolantic, a local commercial real estate firm, and later merged with NAI Carolantic Realty with NAI Tri-Properties, a Raleigh firm, in 2020. He had a 50-year in real estate development projects, including Highwoods, Cary's Crossroads Center, and Briar Creek. A street that allows access to the arena's parking lot has been named E. Stephen Stroud Way. And former Detroit Red Wings coach Derek Newsy Lalonde was hired on Wednesday by the Montreal Canadiens as an assistant coach on Martin St. Louis' staff. Montreal's original Newsy Lalonde was Edward Lalonde, who dominated hockey with the Canadiens through the early 1900s. As a player-coach, Lalonde led Montreal to their first Stanley Cup in 1916. Elected into the Hockey Hall of Fame in 1950, he has the third best points per game total at 1.667, trailing only Mario Lemieux and Wayne Gretzky. Derek Lalonde won 2 Stanley Cups with the Lightning, then took over as the Red Wings bench for 2.5 seasons with an 89, 86, and 23 record before spending this past season next to Craig Berube on the Toronto Maple Leafs bench. After he was relieved of his duties by Toronto on Tuesday, he's coming to Montreal to take over the role of Trevor Letowski, who had been in that seat since 2021.
And now we take a little look at Major League Baseball, and it's kind of an unusual time because we have the All-Star game on Tuesday night, and tonight is the revised and restructured Home Run Derby. And the starters will be Christopher Sanchez of the Phillies, who's been tabbed to start for the National League, while Dylan Cease of the Blue Jays will start for the American League in the All-Star game on Tuesday in Philadelphia. Meanwhile, the Yankees right-hander Cam Schlittler has opted against pitching in the All-Star game because manager Aaron Boone said that Schlittler, though healthy, wants to rest up for the second half of the season. In news from from Detroit, the report is that Skubal wants to stay with the Tigers. Two-time reigning American League Cy Young Award winner Tarik Skubal has informed friends that he would like to remain with the Detroit Tigers, USA Today reported. Skubal, who has spent his entire 7-year career with the Tigers, has been the subject of trade talks throughout the season. The left-hander is in the final year of his contract, with many believing he could command the biggest pitching free agent deal in history. Per USA Today, Skubal feels the Tigers have a realistic shot at winning the World Series this year. The outlet quoted Skubal as saying, "I've never lost faith." The Phillies sent Skubal and the Tigers into an all-star break with a 5-0 loss on Sunday at Comerica Park. The Tigers, who had won 9 of 10 before dropping their last 2 games, are 44-52 at the break, 6.5 games back in the Central Division and 3.5 games back in the wild card race. And finally, today in baseball, the stat of the day. And that stat is 1. Astros right fielder Lamont Wade Jr. clubbed his first career grand slam during Saturday's win over the Rangers. It was the second of 3 homers that were hit by Houston in their 9-3 victory that night. And over to you, Ed.
Well, Scoopel is delusional if he thinks Detroit's going to win the World Series this year. That's going to be the Los Angeles Dodgers, and you heard it here first. You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, and the time is 29 minutes past the hour, and it is time to ask Eric and get life's problems solved. And the first one is headlined, Niece Bars Aunt's Long-Term Boyfriend from Wedding. Dear Eric, my niece, age 31, is getting married in the fall and has told me that I can't bring my boyfriend, who for this article is named S, of 5 years because there isn't, quote, room, unquote. I offered to pay for his meals, extra seating, etc., but she will not budge. I found out that the real reason is that she hasn't met him and they only want people they know at the wedding. Earlier in the year, before the engagement, I mentioned that we would like to come out to California so my nieces and their partners could meet S. Well, their schedules were too busy for us to find a date. These are my brother's children, and my brother died unexpectedly in 2021, and my parents have also passed, so I am the only living relative on their father's side. I've always been close to my nieces, and I've spent a lot of money on them over the years, which I don't regret. I poured my heart out, saying that the wedding would be a tough day for me because I would be thinking about my brother, her father, a lot, along with my parents being gone. I told her that I needed S by my side. I will be the only paternal person attending, while their mother's side will have more than 20 people. Aunts, uncles, cousins, and grandparents. I am very hurt by this decision and decided not to go to the wedding. Is there any way to change her mind? I understand both of our actions have consequences, but why can't she see how much this is hurting me? I also mentioned that she's probably inviting people that she won't even keep in touch with in 5 years, but this is your aunt's partner, and he is a very important part of my life. Signed, no room at the wedding. Dear Wedding, guest lists are often a sort of consternation, with marrying couples often struggling to balance their needs, wants, and financial position with the needs and wants of their friends and families. What can seem like a very important line in the sand might later fade into a non-issue. While your niece's desire to have only people she knows at her wedding is completely understandable, having your partner there isn't likely to impact her day one way or the other. I wish she was able to be a bit more flexible about this. That said, I think you'll regret not going to the wedding, and it might be helpful to reconsider your decision. You can still bring S on the trip and plan with him to meet up elsewhere before or even during the reception so that he can support you. But you may fracture your relationship with your niece if you decline to attend, which could compound the grief you're already feeling about her father's death. Weddings bring out heightened emotions. We rarely get it completely right. By going, you give yourself the gift of being present for something your brother surely would have wanted you to see. Dear Eric, a new friend has developed a habit I don't love, but I don't know how to politely discourage her from doing it. I invite her to meet me somewhere for games and happy hour, casual but planned. Without asking, she texts back that she's invited others that will join us. This tends to work out fine, yet I'm still rankled that she invited others to what has been my invitation to her. Is there something I can say that's polite, yet able to get my point across, or do I not have a point? Signed, please stop inviting the uninvited. Dear Uninvited, next time you might have to be proactive about communicating your expectations by saying something like, I'd love to go out for a happy hour, but let's just keep it to the two of us. She might ask why, which gives you the opportunity to talk about being more comfortable with plans that don't have a ballooning guest list. You can also bring it up on the next outing that it's just the two of you. Point out in a non-judgmental manner the pattern you're noticing and express your desire to operate a different way. She may not think anything of inviting other people. She may also share that she would rather hang out in groups, which would give you the opportunity to ask why. Ideally, you'll both see where the other is coming from. This friendship is new, so you're both still learning each other's habits. By reflecting your experience back to her and offering an alternative, you keep the focus on a shared objective in your friendship rather than chastising her. This will help this new friendship to grow into a lasting one.
Our next article is about public health, and its headline is Stomach Bug Cases Climb. A parasitic illness called cyclosporasis is on the rise in the United States. More than 140 people were sickened so far, according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Cyclosporasis is a foodborne illness, but unlike typical food poisoning caused by bacteria, such as Salmonella or E. coli, it is caused by a microscopic parasite called Cyclospora caenatanus. While most bacterial food-borne illnesses resolve within a few days, cyclosporasis can lead to gastrointestinal symptoms that persist for weeks or longer, according to the Food and Drug Administration. For now, people should stay informed, but there's no reason to panic. Cyclosporasis is generally not transmitted directly from one person to another. Instead, the primary risk comes from eating contaminated fresh produce. Here's what to know about the diarrhea-causing parasite and steps to lower your risk. So far, the CDC reported 145 people became ill in the United States. 20 were hospitalized and no deaths were reported. Cases occurred in people ages 5 to 86, with a median age of 42. However, according to Michigan Public NPR, almost 700 cases were reported in Michigan alone. There is no indication that one nationwide outbreak was responsible for all the cases. Federal, state, and local health agencies were instead investigating multiple groups of infections and possible sources of contamination. The cyclosporasis season, the months when U.S. cases typically spike, runs from May 1st through the end of August. Concerns include delayed diagnosis and prolonged severe diarrhea, which can persist for weeks and last significantly longer than a typical stomach bug. Over the past several weeks, more reports of what the CDC describes as explosive diarrhea emerged. You have to treat this infection with an antibiotic, and there's a special antibiotic called Bactrim DS. Unless you get a stool test, specifically a GI pathogen panel, and it comes back positive, a doctor will not know how to treat it. Without the test, it could be viewed as bacterial or viral diarrhea. Infection spreads through the oral ingestion after contact with contaminated feces, and the germs often contaminate water and food. Several foods are linked to the outbreak, including bagged salad kits, raspberries, green onions, cilantro, and basil. To reduce the risk of cyclosporasis, health officials issued guidance aimed at everyone involved in preparing, processing, or serving fresh produce. First, wash hands with soap and water before and after handling raw fruits and vegetables. Thoroughly wash all fruits and vegetables under running water before eating, cutting, or cooking. Scrub firm produce such as melons and cucumbers with a clean brush. Cut away bruised or damaged areas. Clean and sanitize utensils and food prep services before and after use. Sanitize display cases and refrigerators used to store fresh produce. Clean and sanitize cutting boards and tools used with fresh produce. Refrigerate cut, peeled, or cooked fruits and vegetables promptly. You need to wash your fresh produce and wash your hands carefully when around someone with cyclopsoriasis. Even if you're in part of the country not nearly affected, it doesn't mean you shouldn't be taking any precautions.
Well, our next story is headlined "The Dying Aid Movement Grows." Jules Netherland traveled from her home in the Bronx to the New York State Capitol in Albany several times in the past few years, hoping to persuade the legislature to pass a medical aid in dying bill that would allow terminally ill patients to end their lives with a lethal prescription. She spoke at rallies with other members of the advocacy organization Compassionate Choices. She visited legislators' offices. In 2024, as the Assembly debated the bill, she helped unfurl a banner in the chamber gallery that read, "Stop the Suffering." Netherland, age 59, who works for a nonprofit, was diagnosed with breast cancer in 2019. "I did a full year of aggressive treatment," she said. "Chemotherapy, a mastectomy, radiation treatment every day for 5 weeks, 6 months of 2 oral medications." She recovered and felt well until the cancer returned a few years later. Though metastatic breast cancer is incurable, drugs keep her disease at bay for now. She feels fortunate but also fatigued and contends with brain fog, gastrointestinal symptoms, and joint pain. She feared she might die before the bill, first introduced in New York in 2016, could become law. On June 9, 2025, after the Assembly approved the bill, Netherlands saw it pass in the state Senate. Governor Kathy Hochul signed an amended version in February. It takes effect on August 5th. A similar law is slated to take effect in September in Illinois, which would become the 13th state, plus the District of Columbia, where medical aid in dying is legal. "A breakthrough moment," said Kevin Diaz, president of Compassionate Choices, which spearheaded the campaign for such laws. After almost 30 years, Oregon's law, the first in the U.S., was enacted in 1997. The addition of 2 populous states means almost a third of Americans will live in one where medical aid in dying is legally available. "It shows there's broad support for this model," Diaz said. Polls consistently back that claim. A Pew Research Center survey last spring found almost 2/3 of respondents did not consider the practice morally wrong. Support crossed many political and religious lines. A narrow majority of Republicans and 76% of Democrats found physician-assisted death, also sometimes called physician-assisted suicide, permissible. So did most Catholics, Jews, and non-evangelical white Protestants. In New York, a Siena poll found that 54% of respondents supported aid in dying, including majorities of men and women in all age groups, and of city, suburban, and upstate residents. A plurality of Latinos supported it. Black respondents narrowly opposed it. Passing these laws grew somewhat easier, said Thaddeus Pope, a bioethicist and professor at the Mitchell Hamline School of Law in St. Paul, Minnesota, who tracks such policies. "You can say we have 10 years in California, 18 years in Washington, and 29 years in Oregon, and nothing bad has happened. It becomes more accepted." Legalizing medical aid in dying, or MAID, remains a long, contentious process. Catholic leadership and many disability organizations staunchly oppose it. The American Medical Association says physician-assisted suicide is fundamentally incompatible with a physician's role as healer and poses serious societal risks, though a number of state medical organizations opted to remain neutral or, as in New York, support passage. The Patients' Rights Action Fund, through a sister organization, has lawsuits pending or on appeal in California, Delaware, and Colorado, arguing that aid in dying laws discriminate against people with disabilities by steering them toward physician-assisted suicide instead of treatment. This is a litigation strategy we've developed to ultimately get to the Supreme Court, said Matt Valliere, the group's executive director, who declined to say whether it would sue to block the Illinois and New York laws. Even when medical aid in dying laws succeed, using them can prove challenging. In every state except Montana, where it became legal through a court decision, there is no statute governing eligibility. Aid in dying is only available to people with incurable illnesses who are expected to die within 6 months.
Our next article is a fascinating look at a 99-year-old woman who instructed Roman royalty but now teaches in California, and it's entitled Keeping on Her Toes. In 1953, French journalist J.C. Verot reviewed the Marquis de Cuevas ballet company performance of Les Civides. The show starred some of the most iconic post-war ballet dancers: Serge Gelavine, Rosella Hightower, Jacqueline Moreau. But Verot didn't focus on them. He was enthralled by Helga Molson Dekansky. We were surprised to find ourselves preferring Helga Monsoon. Remember her name. It will soon be a famous one, Verot wrote in French. But Monson Dekansky never became a world-famous ballerina. A few years later, she started a family and had to balance her responsibilities as a performer and ballet instructor with those of motherhood while returning to the United States. Still, more than 70 years later, she hasn't lost her love of dance. The 99-year-old Sierra Madre, California resident still teaches ballet at Pasadena Dance Theater. She's more frail than she once was and recently battled a bout of pneumonia that hospitalized her. But if you ask her about ballet, she lights up talking about her journey. Molson Dekansky began dancing as a child in Independence, Kansas. During the Great Depression, her family moved from city to city. In each new place, her parents found her a dance school. Dance always spoke to her, and she explained the highlight of her young years when her father drove them to Topeka to watch a German modern dance company perform The Green Table. That was the first professional performance I ever saw of ballet or anything, Monson Dekansky said during a recent interview at her home, where she has lived now for 60 years. And I was just mesmerized. Between the music, the lighting, and the dancing, jumping up and down from the table, it was a wonderful performance. Monson Dekansky's mid-century modern house is filled with decades of love and classical music, CDs, and cassette tapes that she records for ballet class and clutter her shelves. The walls are lined with paintings done by her husband, Igor, a painter and a sculptor whom the Times profiled in 1991. He also built the wooden kitchen cabinets. The house is tucked down a long gravel driveway surrounded by nature, which Monson Dekansky says is the most important thing that she's learned to appreciate. The day after she graduated from high school, Monson Dekansky left on a train from Atlanta to study ballet under Elizabeth Anderson Ivantoza in New York City. Monson Dekansky trained with the former Bolshoi Ballet prima ballerina for 3 years until her father inquired about her future. My dad wrote and said, "Is it about time that you got a job?" Because we were poor, and he was supporting this, bless his heart, she said. Monson Dekansky auditioned for Colonel Wassily de Basil's Ballet Russe while the troupe toured in America. She was accepted and had only 7 days to obtain a passport before she took a boat across the ocean to England to perform at the Royal Opera House in London's Covent Garden. Thrown into the thick of a ballet season, the dancer explained there wasn't time to be lonely. It was constant, come, go, rehearsal, she said. After the Ballet Russe disbanded, Monson Dekansky toured with the Marquis de Cuevas Ballet Company for 9 years. This gave her the opportunity to perform throughout Europe, South America, North America, and even during inaugural events to Prince Rainier III of Monaco, and in Europe she studied with ballet legends, including Olga Preobrazhenska, Boskislav Nijinsky, and Vera Volka. Even at 99, she has no plans to retire. At least she says, not as long as I can still walk.
Well, we'll wrap up this morning with the My View column from the editorial page of today's Buffalo News, and the headline here is, "Seriously, give an improv class a go." And the writer is Ann Hunt, who took a chance on honing her comedy skills. And she writes, "A woman thought volunteering at an animal shelter would be too depressing, but after she reluctantly agreed to help, she found it was the most rewarding and fun volunteer job she ever had." The example of "try it, you'll like it" happy ending was contributed to a Reader's Digest magazine. My experience with improv would fit right in. You know, improv. Comedy performed by people responding to surprise cues, usually from the audience. You can get a good dose of improv from the TV show Whose Line Is It Anyway? Watching creative entertainers spontaneously come up with clever lines and moves is thrilling. One thing I was sure of, I could never do improv. No way. Too inhibited, slow, and self-conscious. So what the heck was I doing in the Intro to Improv class at the Senior Center? In a weak moment, or was it a strong one, I had registered online. Full disclosure. The idea was to go to one class, never to return. I would have the whole rest of my life to get over it if the class was traumatic. I'm about to start my 4th round of classes. I tried it and liked it. Definitely not the best student of the genre, but occasionally I'll get a laugh, which is very fun. I laid low for the first few sessions. Mike, the teacher, is patient, so I wasn't pushed into performing. Gradually, I started to participate here and there. One big factor was encouraging classmates who were complimentary of everything I did, no matter how lame. Another big plus, which made me want to stay in the class, was Mike. He has lots of professional improv and acting experience and has linked some students to paid improv and acting jobs through his real-world connections. Isn't it great to have a teacher who's doing what they're teaching? What really made it painless was that the class was structured as playing a game. Take the dating game. It's like the original televised version, except each of the 3 possible dates has an odd quirk which is suggested by the audience. For example, one of the dating contenders may be told to pretend that he is George Washington. Quirks are assigned while the soliciting dater is out of the room. The soliciting dater returns to question the contenders to select one. He or she asks George Washington where they would go on their first date. Often a funny reply comes out like winter boating or orchard thinning. presto, we have improv. The aspiring dater continues to try to identify the quirk of each candidate. Sometimes funny lines are elusive, but it's amazing how often zingers hit. Don't think, just get something out. It's a challenge for us cautious types. Mike has lots of fun games to improve improv skills. The improv class does a showcase at the end of the semester for the public. One of the beauties of improv is that no formal preparation is required, no frantic memorizing of lines, no costumes, nothing. Yet my improv experience fits right into the try it, you'll like it space. Now, I sign up every time it's offered. What other unlikely thing should I try? I could jump out of an airplane like so many of my friends are doing to celebrate a big birthday, or would that be more of a try it and you'll pass out?
Very good. Good way to end the broadcast today. You've been listening to a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News for July 13th. We read the Buffalo News live on weekday and Sunday mornings at 9 a.m. and then rebroadcast at 4 p.m. For more information, call 716-821-5555. Your readers today have been
Ed Howard.
and Ted Pajaki. We thank you for listening and have a nice, warm day.
Stay cool.
If you're listening to this publication online, you're probably using our website, a podcast player like Spotify or iTunes, a streaming service like Siro, or a smart speaker. Did you know that we now have a dedicated app that can be downloaded to any mobile device, like a smartphone or tablet, for free? App users can conveniently access our live stream and any episode of our podcast easier than ever. To download the app, just type NFRRS in the search window in the Apple App Store or in the Google Play Store. Contact us anytime if you have any questions by calling 716-821-5555, extension 5. Thank you. blind, have low vision, or have another print disability.